Thank you for joining us again. I've got John Dandro from Radenso Radar here as my co-host. We're talking radar detectors. If you'd like to call in and chat with us live, the number is 216-294-4124. And if you call in, of course, you'll jump the line for the internet questions. Again, if you want to just post wherever you're watching live, Facebook or YouTube, you want to poach your questions. Yes, we will poach your questions and then answer them. Post your questions and we'll do our best to answer them about radar detectors or alleged speeding or whatever you feel is appropriate. So, John, thank you again for being on with us. So you mentioned Theia. You mentioned that the chip shortage is greatly affecting your primary business of radar detectors, and you can imagine that we got a ton of questions about Theia. When is Theia coming out? When is Theia coming out? When are you actually going to release it? And I know the chip shortages have affected that. But talk to us a little more about what Theia is and what difficulties you're experiencing in getting that product to market, and maybe even when we can expect it.
Sure, except for the last part.
Right. Okay. First two are good.
So the number one problem that I had as a consumer, a user of radar detectors, is false alerts. There's too many of them, and if you're speeding, every second counts. And that, if you're going for a Cannonball Run, you don't want to be slowing down all the time.
Sure.
Right? And likewise, if it's a boy who cried wolf phenomenon too.
Yes.
There's nothing good about the lack of specificity with alerts.
Yep.
So what we call that is radar detectors. They can detect radar, but they don't have radar discrimination. They don't have signal discrimination. They can't tell you that's a Mazda, that's a police gun, that's a whatever.
Well, the V1, the app that goes with the V1 does.
No, actually, it doesn't.
Well, that's what everybody tells me.
So that app, the JBV1, which is a third-party app,
yes,
it's a great app, and it can add tons of functionality to it, but it does not do signal discrimination. There's no radar detector in the world right now that can accurately do signal discrimination.
Why?
The only type of signal discrimination that some of them can do from a rudimentary level is some of Unidens and some of Escorts can tell a couple of types of speed camera systems.
Okay.
So they might be able to tell you that's a red flex or that's an MRCD, which are two different types. But what's even more annoying with those is the false alerts are off the charts. And again, our radar detector's false alert, Uniden's false alert, Escort's false alert. This is a common problem with every current radar platform in existence. And the reason why they can't do that, to be honest with you, is just because radar detectors don't matter from a business standpoint to the level where it makes sense anymore for big companies to dump the kind of money into R&D that it takes to do that.
Because it's a niche market.
Yeah. So when radar detectors, when most of them were designed, or the idea of them, I guess, became popular, there wasn't much radar pollution with what we call modulated signals. And I'm not going to go down the tech rabbit hole, but more complicated
I remember
10
years ago, there wasn't really a false alert. Like you drive by a supermarket. That was a big joke. Oh, you drive by a supermarket
there was
and
just
you
one
get
or two
a false
types
signal.
of false alerts. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, but you didn't get them from every
car.
other car on the road.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
So because police guns they all use the same style wave. I'm being super simplistic from a tech standpoint.
Well, no, I get that. So I've noticed that Pennsylvania, for example, Pennsylvania is notorious because so I've almost never gotten a KA band faults, right? Most police departments now with advanced radar guns use KA band. Mm-hmm. So you can all but shut off K band in most of the country and eliminate false alerts and for the most part have a reliable radar detector. You'll miss some.
In about 50% of states you can do that, maybe. But K-band is still very widely used.
Okay, yes, but it's moving towards KA. So even a few years ago, Ohio State Patrol moved from K to KA. Pennsylvania is the rub there. But I've noticed that, like, let's use Pennsylvania for an example. I've gotten false alerts and legitimate radar hits from police at the same frequency or overlapping frequency. So even locking out a specific frequency doesn't work because the cops and the Hondas are using the same frequency of K-band.
That's mostly correct, and that's kind of a problem, and it goes back to what I was saying, where every detector right now from all brands is trying to solve a problem with Band-Aids instead of solving the problem. They're saying...
Band-Aids.
With a KA Band-Aid.
KA Band-Aid. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry, did I derail you?
No, it's just crazy to me, though. Like, did you know that... To give you an example, you know Elon Musk, his Starlink, right? The satellite service that gives internet to people. That actually transmits using KA band. But the reason the KA band signal that Starlink uses looks nothing like a police gun, because Starlink needs to carry data. You need to be able to receive data in there. So you can't just send a constant blamp signal. It's turned on and off quickly at different lengths. It does all kinds of these weird tricks that encodes data in the signal. That's also what your safety systems from your Mazdas and Cadillacs do. Police radar is so simple that it actually can't tell distance. Most people don't know that. It just tells you how fast it's going, but it doesn't tell you distance, because in order to do that, it would have to be a more complicated waveform. The sensors in your cars can tell distance. That's how they know if you're about to hit something, if you're going to back into it.
Well, because the police radars measure differential in distance, right?
Just speed, yeah. Just simple Doppler radar.
Okay. Trying to remember the difference. I cannot talk tonight. Laser measures speed. No, laser measures distance.
Speed and distance, yep.
Okay. But there was a way that they measure it that was different, and one of them measured distance and the other measured speed. And I thought that radar measured distance.
The way that police radar can measure distance, but police radars, the ones on the market right now, do not measure distance. They calculate speed using Doppler shift.
Okay. Man, we're getting into the geek stuff here.
But this...
Okay, so all that to say, how does the Theia solve those problems?
So if you think about maybe a radar system that's installed on one of our fighter jets, do you think that false alerts to your local supermarket when you fly over it?
No,
that would be ludicrous, right? So
if it did, they'd bomb them all.
You never know nowadays. But it's like, if you start thinking about that, if the technology to tell one type of radar signal from another has been around for years and years and years. It all goes back to nobody has found it economically justifiable to put that into a radar detector. And to be honest with you, 15, 20 years ago, I'm not sure if it would be even for us. The technology has now come down to a point where it's still expensive, but a relatively well-funded, relatively small company can make a device that is basically an electronic intelligence receiver, or basically a pared down version of what they have in these planes. And you can actually identify certain radar signatures by their characteristics. If you look at a Porsche, right, from a distance, you can tell a 911's a 911 just by the silhouette of it, right?
Yep.
Now, if you're really far away, you might not be able to tell if it's a 9911 or 2. If you're really far away, that's if you have low signal to noise ratio.
Unless I have stabilized binoculars.
Well, those would increase your SNR. So now let's say that you take your binoculars, which are like an amplifier for radar. We have little amplifiers, all of us do, inside these radar detectors. Now you can see it better, and you can pick out the little details on it that let you say it's a 9912.
4S.
Exactly.
Because it has the reflector.
The wider hips on the 4S, right? So those types of differences exist with radar signals too. The problem is that current radar detectors are looking at everything in really low fidelity, and they don't have enough processing power to be able to pick out those small differences. So to them, a police radar gun signal, which is just one continuous, it's like just holding down the trigger on something, just like emitting some signal, turning the volume to full. They can't tell the difference between that and something that's going on and off quickly, or maybe on and off with slight changes left to right quickly. It just all looks the same to them. But that's not how military radar receivers work. They know what the radar signals from the different planes look like, and they can match up characteristics with those planes and tell you that is an F-16, that's a MiG. And there's no reason you can't do that with radar detectors too, except everything's been good enough and selling pretty well. Everyone, you have an Escort, you've got a Uniden, you've got a Uniden. Why would we spend the money to do that when everyone's buying our products and there's no competition?
The only thing people care about is range and arrows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if everything is roughly the same, which it has been for years, then why innovate, right?
Sure.
This is not $1 billion market. Even globally, it's not even $1 billion. And for venture capitalists, you need a return on your investment.
Right.
And unfortunately for radar detectors, it's this weird device where the electronics part of it, like the computer part of it, there's a lot of companies that can do that. But to design an antenna to pick up Ka band and K band, and to design the radio electronics to detect that in a high fidelity way, that's almost black magic. That's something that your average electronics engineer can't do. It's this whole discipline of engineering that tends to really only be utilized by defense and then companies like Apple or Google or SpaceX. It's high frequency engineering is this weird thing that's not done in consumer devices. So it's this combination of a small market size with a really specialized, difficult engineering discipline to help people drive faster without getting caught. Like, people just don't invest in it.
Right.
It's
In an
just
era
crazy.
where people are ceasing to drive and
You're going to endanger lives, and you're a criminal.
right. They'd rather Facebook while they're driving, and
Exactly.
they're buying
Much
EVs
safer.
that are self-driving, and Okay, so along those lines, I don't mean to be like depressive about the future, but so Canada radar detectors are illegal. Virginia
In
radar detectors
half of the country, yes.
are illegal. People are moving to self-driving autonomous vehicles slowly, but whatever, they're moving that direction. Combination of you're in a very niche small market, and government legislation is becoming more and more overreaching all the time. Do you see anything on the horizon, or is there something in terms of government legislation or a major shift in how people perceive vehicles that would essentially force you to take a different direction, to say, well, radar detectors are done, we have to reinvent the company?
Absolutely, but we kind of planned for that from the beginning. So
Okay.
I think it's more the second part. I don't think government regulation is going to play a part in it. I just think that I know that less and less people seem to be driving enthusiasts every year, and the technology to regulate speed, unfortunately, in my opinion, I very much value freedom and the ability to make the choice for myself, but it's getting easier to regulate. The technology to regulate speed on cars, or even just if you wanted to automate speeding tickets, that's way less expensive than designing a radar detector. It's just simple. So I have a pessimistic view from a 20-year time frame about the viability of radar detectors. But if our radar detectors that we were designing in-house, and I'm not talking about our existing products, because I put so much resources toward our upcoming products. If those were just radar detectors like everything else, I'd be very concerned. But they're not. What's interesting about our platform is you can almost think of it like two boxes. It's this box where the identification of a signal happens, and then there's we'll call it the antenna box to keep things simple. And most detectors, current detectors, including ours, are built, so the whole thing is kind of one box designed to do one job specifically. But that limits their usefulness to only doing that one job. And it also limits their upgradability. If some new frequency of police radar came out, or if some new complicated, what if the police came out with a radar gun that was modulated? No detector in the world could detect that right now. And that's
what the new laser guns are, right? And
pretty much.
my
The
terms are
Dragonite.
failing me.
Yeah.
Dragonite, yes, but there's a term for it. So it's a variable pulse rate. Thank you.
You are absolutely going in the right direction with that.
Right. and that's why Escort had such a struggle with their laser diffusers, because they were designed to block fixed pulse rate laser guns, and then the Dragon Eye led the charge, but other guns came out with a variable pulse rate such that the diffusers couldn't even pick up the signal.
Now, what's crazy about that is they had a tough time with that, even though they know exactly what frequency the laser is going to be at. Unlike radar, which could be anywhere from 10 gigahertz for X-band to 24 for K to 33 to 36. That's a huge amount of space, and the signal that you're looking for could be hidden anywhere in there.
Right.
Laser, it's always at the same frequency. The only thing that changes is how fast it pulses, which is a type of modulation. If I decided to make a police radar gun, my guys could make a police radar gun in 3 weeks that no existing radar detector could detect, and it would cost like $150.
Why don't you?
Because I like driving.
Yeah,
but we do joke about it.
Yeah, but you also like money and government contracts. My richest clients are government contractors. Come on.
But you got to understand the way that we build.
I like driving too, and I would like driving a McLaren F1, and that government contracts are McLaren F1 money.
But you know where you make way more money than selling a radar gun and screwing over drivers? You make more money selling devices that can discriminate, cost-effective devices for the government, which are not cost-effective that we would think of, but like they have a lot more money than your average consumer.
Yep.
That can pick up signals really, really well in a variety of frequency bands that are deployable and can be run off a USB port. That's a much bigger opportunity.
Gotcha.
So we've built for us, we'll call it a radar detector. It is a police radar detector, but we've built a distributed sensing platform that can be applied to tell you if a signal is present in a space with just a different antenna plugged in. You want to know if it's a Wi-Fi signal, a drone signal, a lot of other signals I can't talk about. We can do that, and we built that from the ground up to do that, because this is not a 20-year radar detector thing.
How similar is that in the UK and or Europe? They have a device that can detect, so police scanners can only detect unencrypted, can only monitor unencrypted channels. There's a device in Europe that can detect encrypted transmission. Yep. So it's basically like an encrypted transmission detector. So it alerts you if like, oh, okay, emergency personnel is
the blue eye, I think,
something
to target
like that.
blue eye or something.
Right.
Yeah.
How similar is that to what you're talking about?
That again is something that's built for one specific frequency range, one specific platform. So you can almost think of that as a radar detector, just instead of radar, it detects that frequency.
Okay.
But those devices aren't built to be able to switch from looking at like a narrow signal to a wide signal, or a whole bunch of other technical stuff. So that's a cool device, and I've heard pretty good things. I haven't used one personally, so I'm not an expert. I've heard decent things about it.
I don't think you can get them here, and they are prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
So,
But,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.